drumsticks on the carcass. And when I tried to get them, there was like no meat left on them. I'm like, oh
God.
Oh, and that's like always at the part. I always take the drumstick and I slather it in cranberry sauce. And it tastes amazing.
Oh, that sounds nice.
It's so good.
So what's the spread like for you guys?
Wait, you're talking like actual spread or like football spread? Because you know me, I'm not a sports ball guy.
No, like the spread.
Oh.
Like what did you guys eat?
Well, turkey. We had 2 different kinds of stuffing, a couple different kinds of stuffing actually. We had mashed potatoes, both regular and made with sweet potato. We had my family also brought their usual. It's a green bean casserole that I never usually go for. That was about it. Yeah, it wasn't like huge this year, you know, like it wasn't like 15 different courses, but like I don't know, I kind of like it that way, you know, like it's a more
less choices, enjoy more of what's there.
But it's more so a situation.
That was exactly ours too.
Yeah, but it's more so a situation of where we have like less family member, we have more. What's it called? You know, more time to appreciate with the family members that do come. You know, the ones we really know. Because I remember we would go to Thanksgivings at my uncle's place, at my great uncle's place when he ran it in Thanksgiving, and that was fun. But the problem is there were always so many people there, and they would always like go in and out because a lot of old people that were like die in between each thing. So it was like a bunch of new faces we could add in every time. I'm like, I'm sorry, I don't know who you are at all. But it was pretty cool. I'll tell you, the other cool thing about Thanksgiving is hooking up with the one random family member who you didn't know was a pothead because you weren't a pothead the last time you saw them. And next thing you know, we link up, and next thing you know, we're both like hooking each other up, and it's pretty great.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, that's some Thanksgiving fun.
Yeah, definitely. That was pretty fun.
That's cool.
Are we rolling?
Yeah, we're rolling.
Have we been rolling this entire time?
I can cut that part out if you don't want it.
No, that's fine. Honestly, keep that part in. That's like actually legitimately great. That was like an awesome intro.
You just have to sync this up. So I guess you can just sync it up to that crazy mouth noise I just made.
Oh, that's fine. I don't mind that. But yeah, so Chris, in that case, I'm going to start off with a joke that I told you about beforehand. And Chris, I have an offer that you can't refuse. Oh, wait, is that the right franchise? Oh, wait, that's the wrong director. Because, well, they could give Scorsese all the credit they want for basically inventing the gangster genre and making the gangster genre what it is. He didn't do The Godfather. No, that was the other guy that hates Marvel. Anyways, we're back. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone. Or in this case, happy Black Friday, everyone. God, I want to shoot myself just for having to say those words. Because Black Friday has literally become more of a priority in today's world than Thanksgiving is.
And family.
Yay, capitalism. Give evil corporations more of a reason to keep their employees away from their families. Anyways, that beautiful little tidbit aside, I'm here. It's me, Dom, the movie nerd. Make sure you guys get that right. There's many movie nerds, but there's only one the movie nerd.
Yeah, there's only one definitive movie nerd.
Exactly. And I'm here once again with my faithful co-host. I still haven't managed to find Johnny, though. Chris, we've been talking about like getting Johnny back on an episode for a while now. I don't know. I just can't seem to find him. I looked at his cage the other day. He wasn't there. You know, the usual droppings. You know, the stuff that we fed him from the side. I miss him, you know?
Yeah, I think he escaped while we were watching Barry again.
Probably did.
Something like that.
Something like that.
And maybe in our Silicon Valley rewatch.
Possibly. It all depends. We just have to find something alluring enough to get him back, and then he'll be back in the cage that we'll be bringing him out every once in a while. I love this. Yep. Anyways, but so Chris, there was a movie that came out, technically not on Thanksgiving, but it was the day before Thanksgiving. And you want to tell them what movie that was that we're reviewing this time?
I'm going to take a guess. I think it was The Irishman.
You would be correct.
By Martin Scorsese.
Yep, Martin Scorsese's newest movie, 3.5 hour long epic made by Netflix. So the new Martin Scorsese movie, the guy who has gone out of his way to tote for the original cinematic theater-going experience, who unintentionally, I would like to add, started the infamous director Marvel feud that is going on right now. And this is probably the most convenient way I've ever had. The most convenient that I've ever had in terms of watching a movie that is most likely going to win multiple Oscars. I remember the last Scorsese movie I watched, which was 2016 Silence. I saw that on New Year's Day. I remember I went down to the city with my buddy just so that we could watch it in the AMC Lincoln Center 13 on New Year's Day. He hated it. I loved it. And now here we are. I didn't even have to leave my house. in order to watch this new Scorsese movie. Before we jump in, Chris, is there any comments that you have on that? Just like whether that worries you, whether it's like you're happy because it's like, yeah, I don't have to leave my house, but at the same time, oh no, it's killing cinema more. You know, give us your thoughts.
I definitely think that it kind of did this film a disservice. Being able to watch it on your couch and not get the full effect of like the theater experience for like a movie of this caliber, but it was I think gonna get the most views and the most audience reception this way, so it makes sense.
Not to mention the fact that this was marketed. Not to mention the fact this Netflix was the only one that was gonna be able to fork over the money, because Paramount, after Wolf of Wall Street and after Silence, they were like, they looked at Marty and they're like, 3.5 hours long plus all the de-aging crap. Are you kidding me? There's no way we're gonna fork over the money. So Marty can complain all he wants about how studios and all this other are killing cinema, but guess what? He wants the money to make his movie. It is still a business at the end of the day. Gotta go Netflix. Sorry, man. But weirdly enough, and this is probably where I'm just going to start off, because you know me, I'm full of controversial opinions. So controversial. And this is where I'm going to shock everyone. I think that this movie being on Netflix is the best thing that could have ever happened to this. And I am not kidding at all when I say that, because you know why? Because guess what? People are going to complain about the length. People are going to make memes about it. People are going to put that shit all over the place. They're going to put out like little structures, just like how to watch this as a miniseries, all the different things, complaining about the de-aging, whatever, all the stupid shit that the internet does. And you know what all that is? Publicity. And none of that publicity would be a thing if this movie got released theatrically, because this movie would have tanked at the box office, because nobody would have gone to see it. At Thanksgiving release, a 3.5 hour long gangster piece that does not glorify the genre, that doesn't have the typical slick style that Goodfellas. People are calling this Goodfellas 2.0. I call this the reverse Goodfellas. This is not something that you go to for the bang and the flash and the coolness. This is literally as far from that as you could possibly get. And so to me, this was the perfect Netflix movie. This, for me, I feel like is the inverse of the Bird Box effect, where Bird Box, I feel like, was able to profit because of the amount of memes that it generated. And again, which unfortunately drove a lot of business and a lot of eyes towards that god-awful piece of shit movie that didn't deserve to be seen by even the most, dumb idiots. Right? But in this case, I'm like, wow. Let the evil power of the internet and memes drive more and more people towards this movie, because this is one of the few movies that does deserve to actually be seen by as many people as possible. So, with all that out of the way, in terms of the publicity, we'll talk about everything with Scorsese conflicts with Marvel. Chris, so... we pulled a very serious thing where, for the most part, we talk a little bit about the movie before we get into the episode. We share some of our initial thoughts. When I texted you last night, as you were still finishing this movie, I'd also like to add, it took, unfortunately, I was a little bit guilty because I did have family over while I was watching this. I had to split this up between Wednesday night and Thursday morning in terms of finishing it. So I wasn't able to get it all done within one go. I'm sorry, everyone. I guess I'm not a pure cinemaphile the way that everyone else would assume me to be. I'm just kidding. I don't think that anyone would assume me to be. But so, Chris,
you just lost all credibility.
You said that. Oh, please! I already lost that a long time ago. You said that you did not want to utter a single word of your thoughts on this movie before the podcast. So this is crazy because we're going in cold. I have no idea what you actually thought on this movie. You could absolutely freaking hate this movie. And is it bad that I would say that I wouldn't be surprised at all? You could just as easily hate this movie as much as you could like it. Am I wrong in thinking that at the very least?
No, you're not wrong in thinking that.
All right.
I'm going to do that going forward, though.
Okay.
Because I like that. I just feel like it's going to make for a better show for everyone.
Yeah.
But I just felt like if there was a movie to implement a change in our brand new show on, it would be this one. Yeah. Since it's such a monster of a film.
So with that being said, Chris, what are your thoughts on The Irishman?
I liked it. I was expecting a lot, and it definitely fell flat in some areas, but overall, I think it was a fine film. We can elaborate on that.
Just a fine film. Well, we are going to elaborate, definitely, especially once I figure out what it is that you define as fine, because I feel like...
my favorite movie of all time is Goodfellas.
Right.
And
Even though I thought it was Star Wars, but...
That's my favorite trilogy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I said that before on the podcast.
Yes, you are right. I don't know why I keep getting that confused all the time.
So, I definitely expect a lot from Scorsese, because that movie's awesome. I put a quote from Goodfellas in one of my songs, a Joe Pesci quote for that matter, too. I just love that movie, and... I think that, so this movie was great. and it was a fine because so basically I think that Scorsese wanted to use some of his favorite actors again, and it was clear that the parts they felt written for De Niro, for Pesci, for Pacino, right? It at least felt like this was the only cast he could have had to make this film. But unfortunately, it felt like everyone was maybe 15 years their senior to play the role properly. And as much as I tried to get past that, and there was like really redeeming, amazing moments in this film, it just still felt like watching someone cling to high school that graduated 10 years ago. You know what I'm saying? It's like, grow up.
I know exactly what you're talking about. I get that.
So it's hard
to
see past that.
Yeah, I definitely get that. So I assume you're referring, of course, to the de-aging from the beginning?
Well, the de-aging, but also like where the characters were at in their lives, like it just didn't look believable. De Niro looks too old to have a dad, to be a dad with kids that young.
Right.
It all just felt like everyone just felt like 10, 15 years.
It was
ahead
very
of
distracting.
The main cast.
Yeah, so basically to elaborate a little bit, so this is a generational movie. It's supposed to start when they're, I'm not going to say exactly very young because I don't know exactly how old Scorsese intended for these characters to be in the beginning. I mean, it's always the assumption is that, considering just because of the makeup for Pesci and how much older he looks than De Niro, it's the idea that Pesci was always supposed to be like a couple years, like I would say like a roughly 10 years minimum older than De Niro, because Pesci's already looking a little on the older side than De Niro was when they first meet. Well. But yeah, what I'll say in that sense is I absolutely understand where you're coming from, where it's the fact that because this is supposed to be a generational story and it's supposed to feature, it's not like a Goodfellas where Goodfellas takes place primarily when the characters are young. I think the characters are only in like late 30s, early 40s, maybe mid 40s when the movie ends, So at the very least, even with his other movies that he's done like over the sense of like, a couple generations, it always takes place within one sect of the characters' lives. This was a different, and again, I admire the movie for its ambition, but you're right, this was different in the sense that it's a movie that encompasses all of their lives. You're supposed to follow these guys from when they're young men on the cusp of getting into this life until they're literally at the end of their life. The whole point is that De Niro was narrating this from an old folks' home. And this is definitely a situation where you're right. Because of where all of these actors are in their lives right now, it's definitely a situation where the second half of this movie was always going to be stronger than the first half. Just for sheer fact of, again, I've heard a million people talk about this so far. Just in terms of the de-aging, right? What the effect actually achieves. Besides the fact that you can't de-age a movement. So even though you think you're looking at younger faces, you can still tell that like these guys are not, you're not watching young people just because of the way they move, the way they talk, how they sound.
Yeah.
There's something
that's
in
true.
there.
But to be honest with you, it kind of felt like the de-aging really didn't work. Like not as well as we've seen it in like the Star Wars trilogy.
That's the one thing you are right. And it's funny because there's 2 points that I actually wanted to bring up in terms of, how Scorsese's gone out of his way to go, well, not really, but, kind of unintentionally started this whole Disney feud. And there's 2 things, honestly, that Disney's got over him. I would say one of them is the de-aging, because say what you will about those Disney, but every single time you saw a de-aging effect, and I don't know, this could just be a money thing. It could be a knowledge thing because they have younger people working on it that know how to work it better. Maybe it's just because the actors that they have are more suited to it. It's a lot easier to make a 70-year-old Michael Douglas look 50 than it is to make an almost 80-year-old Robert De Niro look close to 30. That's very, especially I'll tell you the other thing too of where the disconnect comes in is because body type wise, the difference being that in all the Marvel movies with the de-aging that they've done, I feel like the one big exception being Rogue One, because that's the only situation where you saw somebody literally brought back from the dead. Or again, with the situation with Carrie Fisher at the end of that movie, why it's so starkly
such a
different contrast, because Carrie Fisher now is obviously looks and sounds a lot different than she did 40 years ago. But with the Marvel, how that works so well is because when they de-age, they don't really de-age them that many years, or at the very least, they de-age them to a point where they go after actors whose body types and voices haven't changed that much. So even though you're looking at something fake, the rest of your brain can fill it in because there's not that much of a difference. So even though you're watching, 20-year-old, 25-year-old Downey Jr. de-aged as opposed to right next to 50-year-old Downey Jr. right next to him, because there's not that much of a change in the face, in the facial structure. His voice hasn't changed too much, his body movements, they're really not that different. Same thing with, I would say, Michael Douglas, with the beginning of Ant-Man. I know you don't like Ant-Man that much, but just to give you an example, that takes place in 89. 50-year-old Michael Douglas, as opposed to Michael Douglas now, it's not that much of a difference. So your brain doesn't have to do the extra extra track in order to fill it in. But with this situation, it's because you look at De Niro and Pesci specifically, because I don't think there was actually that much de-aging done around Pacino.
Nah, he seemed like he was fitting the part.
He seemed like, yeah, he seemed like he was the only one.
But
and
he's
again,
always been a little younger than them anyways.
If you want to see something funny, Pacino's actually older than Pesci and De Niro. I'm pretty sure Pacino was the oldest out of the three of them. I'm not kidding.
You're not kidding?
I'm not kidding at all. But yeah, Pacino I know for a fact is older than De Niro, because De Niro was 44, Pacino was 40.
Wow, okay.
Yeah.
Then whatever.
Yeah, no,
Fake news,
that's fine. But it's like the difference being is that you look at De Niro for when they were trying to aim for, right? In terms of, they wanted like 30-year-old De Niro. That's mid-70s. That's Taxi Driver level De Niro. No matter how young you make him look, De Niro, body-wise, is not the same as he was in the 70s. And so already, no matter how young you make him look, your brain is already going 15 extra steps just to try and convince you. But the illusion is already broken, right? At the very least with Pesci, you can convince yourself because of how much older the character is supposed to be. So even though the terrible CG is still distracting, at the very least you can slightly believe it. But with De Niro, it's the biggest thing, because when you're watching him in World War II and you're watching him in the beginning of that movie, again, it's the fact of you're expected to be watching like a mid-30s, I'd say, at average. To
be honest with you, what I think they needed was like
they needed different actors. Just get different younger actors.
Like have you seen Love and Mercy?
No.
The Brian Wilson movie,
I know which movie you're talking about, but yeah.
There are two people that play
Paul Dano
Brian
and then
Wilson
John Cusack,
for both parts of his life, and I think if you still want to keep De Niro involved for the younger person who's cast, have him do some narration, which already is a part of the film anyways, so it wouldn't be. That's what I think it needed, but with that being said, so I think we've made a point. I'd like to move on, actually, but I like what you're saying.
I get it. But just in terms of like the de-aging.
We can't expect Netflix or Martin Scorsese to be able to combat the level of money Disney can put into the de-aging.
Right.
But I just think that unless it's at least the technology is, at least to me, where it's at right now, it's seeming unless you can drop the Disney money on this, don't do it and find a workaround for it.
But it's more
That's
than
what
that.
I got from
it's
this.
not just the Disney money, though, I'd say, but because we've already established it's more than a money issue. It's a matter of you need to get it to a point where it's not going to be that much of a distraction and a hindrance, where it's like, again, you can de-age somebody 20 or 30 years. They've proved that, but it needs to be somebody who hasn't changed that much body-wise, facial-wise, and voice-wise. So that you're giving the animators less to do, and that you're not requiring your audience to think as much, right? And that was the big problem with the de-aging. Besides
I was thinking the entire time about that.
I thought the CG was just bad in general.
See, I thought this movie could have been so much more for me if I wasn't constantly thinking about that. Right. So I hope that younger filmmakers or just other filmmakers in general look at this as an example of where the de-aging technology is at right now.
Right.
So maybe don't take the risk on your own project, because we saw how it played out here. Now, I do want to say this. Regardless of the de-aging and the setting, and I think honestly it was a little overwritten for the characters in the sense of having Robert De Niro be this physical and having a daughter who's 6 years old, when he clearly looks like a 60-year-old man.
That was again a very big distraction. Where
even though that was a distraction, I still thought the core three, De Niro, Pacino, Pesci, awesome performances.
That's
right?
the thing. Literally, you could. There was no way in hell that you were going to get those three actors together on screen for the first time ever. This is the first time that those three have ever been in a movie together.
And thank God it happened.
With Scorsese, there was no way in hell that part was ever going to not hold up. You're talking about three of not only the most legendary American actors, three of the most legendary actors in general that I would say, more so with two than overall three, but I would say in general really helped to change and reshape the landscape of acting in general in terms of when they popped up. Like I said, the biggest thing for me is Pesci, because I wasn't really familiar with Pesci. I don't think a lot of people were until the late 80s, early 90s. Like I said, 1990.
With My Cousin Vinny and Goodfellas and all
even more so than that with 1990. He gets Goodfellas and The First Home Alone in the same year.
Big year for Pesci.
Yeah, big year for Pesci. Not to mention the fact that he wins the Oscar for Goodfellas in a year where Goodfellas couldn't even win Best Picture. Again, with De Niro and beginning of the decades, that was 2 decades in a row that he lost out. That he just could not make it work for him. But yeah, I definitely could not agree with you more there. In terms of those three, like I said, there was no way in hell.
And their chemistry was awesome.
Absolutely. There was no way in hell that you were going to get those three of the most legendary actors who helped redefine the style of, just the idea of what acting is.
And have it be a bad film.
And not have it be a bad film
no
overall.
Chance.
Definitely. Not a chance.
So when I said a fine movie, don't get me wrong, this is still in my top 10 movies of the year.
Yes,
this is also, for the record, so they know, this is the year of my life where I watch the most amount of movies.
Yeah.
By far.
How many are you up to, by the way, now with this?
I think I'm at like 30 something.
Hell yeah, that's
so to
what's
like
up, dude.
comb through top 10, that's hours.
Yeah, that's
I'm
good.
combing through.
That's real
So
good.
this movie has a place in my top 10. Unfortunately, I'm like thinking it's gonna land like 7 or 8. When I was
that's
hoping
fine, dude. This
it would be like 2 or 3.
Literally,
you
no.
know?
And this
so
is
that's
what
the only reason
yeah,
why.
And this is what sucks because, like, once I got to the halfway point, I'm like, that's usually when I can determine whether a movie's in my top 10. And I hate that I think this way, but this is just the age that we live in. It's like, I'm like, okay, at the very least, just
People
for
love
sheer
lists.
fact of what this movie is, who's behind it, who's involved in it, what it's about, what it's trying to say. You know, and all of those things combined, there's no way this movie's not making top 10. But unfortunately, by the halfway point, I'm like, this is great and one of the best of the year, but this is not top 5 of the year for me. You know?
Yeah,
And I feel
agree.
like we both come to that conclusion, you know? I will definitely say that for me, at least, the middle half, obviously, once you get past the initial de-aging and once he's introduced to Hoffa and once they really get into it, in the second half, specifically from like a little bit before the midpoint up until, you know, the big kill, which we'll get into in spoilers, that for me is like very close to perfect. Very, very close to perfect for me.
So I think just jumping forward a little bit now, because, you know, the performances were great. We said
Right.
that. I also really like the supporting cast.
Yeah.
Like, specifically Ray Romano.
Ray Romano's great.
was
I
awesome.
like it's continuing with like his string of his performances of the last couple of years where because he's like I in a way I really like it where because he doesn't have like any big projects that he's attached to, but he's enough of a name that he can get work. He's using that to get work and he's going out there and working with good people. You know, he was one of my favorite parts of The Big Sick and one of my favorite movies of 2017. You know, very good supporting performance in Scorsese's last collaboration with Terry Winter and HBO, Vinyl, which got canceled after one season. And yeah, everything that I've seen him, he was also in a Netflix movie earlier this year with Mark Duplass called Paddleton, which I haven't gotten a chance to see this year, but I heard he's absolutely outstanding in that.
He's making his rounds. He
making his
clearly
rounds,
has a
and
lot
he's
of money
proving
from his
that
show,
there
his
was
sitcom.
Yeah, but I know, but he's doing what a lot of actors in that position should do in this day and age, which is where they're using their previous good grace and they're using that in order to get work and really flex and work, you know, and he's a good actor as a character actor.
Yeah, he had depth. Like the one thing I will say about this script, right? Like I've talked a little bit about what I didn't like about this script,
Right.
and really it was like trying to force a circle into a square, but like the people surrounding the core three, like every character really has so much depth in this. I mean, you expect that from 3.5 hours.
That they inhabit their role, and because Scorsese, obviously, I would say...
Great word. Inhabit their role. I love that. I could agree with that.
Scorsese's always been a guy that works well with actors, but he's one of the few people I've seen. You know, you see all these people that it's like, oh, some are good with technical, some are better with actors. You know, I feel like a big thing that people were trying to say that didn't like the movie is like, oh, at the very least, Andy Muschietti can work with actors. You know, he knows how to get good performance out of actors, which again, I say. But the thing about Scorsese is that he's always been the guy who has such a good eye for everything. He's got such a good eye for scenery. He always knows how to make every single scene pop, even the ones that may seem laggy. He knows how to constantly keep that camera moving so you're never bored, and he knows how to use people. And I don't know if that's because he's always working in situations where he's familiar, so he always knows like how to just like flesh those characters out, you know, without making them feel like stereotypes. But he knows how to get good performances from people, and he's enough of a legend where Scorsese is one of the few people that you hear talking, and it's like literally every single celebrity wants to work with him. Like I don't think I've heard a single celebrity that like is not a fan of Scorsese in some capacity. Literally to the point where on Sopranos, you know, the go-to mob TV show, they reference Scorsese in his movies all the time. It's like every other reference to Scorsese.
Jonah
movie.
Hill saying he only got offered like some like small actor salary to be in The Wolf of
and he
Wall
took
Street,
a pay
but
cut just so that he could work with Scorsese.
Just so he could work with Scorsese. So that's another testimonial.
So it's enough of a celebrity where you got the regulars, you know, you got the people who worked with him for ages, you got the people who just got on his radar,
got the
you know,
DeNiros,
like Ray
you got
Romano
the
and Bobby
Pescis.
Cannavale, you know, they both worked with him on Vinyl. Harvey Keitel, you know, that's another old school one that goes back to Mean Streets. All the people, you know, the character actors that you saw that picked up from like Boardwalk Empire and all the different HBO shows, you know, Stephen Graham, Dominic Lombardozzi, to the point where even you even get like a few stand-up comedians thrown in there. You know, you got Jim Norton in a one-off playing Don Rickles. You got Sebastian Maniscalco.
Yeah, he impressed
as
me.
Crazy Joe Gallo.
He really impressed me because I've only ever seen his stand-up.
Two scenes in the movie, and that's like one of the best supporting performances. Like you want to talk about a scene-stealing performance in that movie.
I think that speaks to him as a creative,
definitely.
I mean, he's not been much of an actor. He's been more of a stand-up comedian, but he can do it.
Yeah, but how that goes back to Scorsese is that Scorsese's one of the few people who knows how to use his celebrity.
I know what you're saying. He can make
to his advantage without sacrificing that on the part of his
right, because everyone wants to work with him, but he's not.
But
just
he
gonna...
never lets anything come before the craft. The craft always comes first for him,
and I think
which is where I have to give him credit.
This movie is a testament to what he's done as a filmmaker. How he has just. I feel like we both went to film school, so we've seen a lot of Scorsese, and every time, like, I'm just like, what am I gonna like learn from him this time?
Yeah,
and
you could never say
you learn, you know, one of my favorite shots was when there was like blurry Italian flags going across the front as he's like panning out from something. I forget what he was panning out from, but I was like, cool. So that shot was like really important because it just shows that like even though the Union thinks that they're not under the control of like the Italian flag, like there it is.
Even though they absolutely
are. And that was
a
great show don't tell.
Absolutely,
and I was like,
yeah,
cool. And that was like in the first half hour or something of the film, so it really set the tone. And this movie did take a little while to really ramp up and get into it, but by no means was it boring. If anything, I loved like the world.
It's the type of movie that takes its time and is very episodic, but it's also a situation, I would say, like a Tarantino movie where you're never bored by one instant, and every single part, like you hear 3.5.
I would say Tarantino knows how to use his celebrity too,
right? But it's different how he does it. It's a whole
agree.
thing, and I don't necessarily want to compare them because I'd say they both use it great. But the thing is that it's one of those situations where you hear 3.5 hours for Scorsese, good, give me more. You know, give me more. It's probably one of the only times where I'll ever say, literally, I hear 3.5 hours, give me 4. I hear 4.5 hours, give me 6. You know,
I put my phone down, didn't check it.
I just know that there's never going to be a single minute of this that feels wasted.
I didn't have
a
a reason to pause to use the bathroom. Like, I was just invested the entire
Silence.
time.
I remember when I watched Silence, I'm like, okay, this is long. This is deliberate. And this is painful to watch at points. But at the very least, I know that every single shot in this movie is going to be important and is going to matter towards what this movie is trying to say, you know? And it's just the fact that he's that level of a craftsman that I know that, it doesn't matter. That you know? So... yeah, but so kind of in order to jump ship more so and get into this movie in terms of like, I don't know, is this the part where you like where we should go into spoilers, you know?
Yeah, I think we're there now.
Okay, awesome. So in terms of talking, like, I feel like I would want to backtrack a little and go back to my point about Goodfellas and why I feel like this is kind of the opposite of Goodfellas, because so a lot of people, you know, it's always the same old critics that go back to, you know, like Goodfellas and Sopranos and all that stuff. It's like, oh my God, you're just glorifying the mob genre. You're making these guys look so cool, you know? And Scorsese, you know, and any other critics are like, yeah, that's the point. It's to glorify these guys so that you can show their fall and show that, like, this is the type of life that you don't want, you know? But that always works the opposite, especially in the age of the internet. Like, how many people watched Fight Club and now thought that Tyler Durden was the coolest guy ever, rather than realizing, oh, this guy's a freaking nutso anarchist that is the subject of somebody with schizophrenia and split personality disorder, you know? Or how many people glorified Wolf of Wall Street when the whole point of that movie was to show that these guys are despicable and heinous, and we're the problem because we idolize guys like that. But no, everyone thinks, oh, Jordan Belfort's the coolest guy ever, you know, even though he's a scumbag who cheated on his wife, you know, ended up as a drug addict, lost all of his money, and as a result, almost lost his family.
But it's the movies, people. You're supposed to be entertained.
Exactly. You're supposed to be entertained, and that's a result. But what I like about this, and again, why I feel like this wouldn't have done well, is because, again, I feel like this plays in the theaters, you know? You say this movie's fine, guarantee you this movie plays in the theaters, everyone says this is like the worst movie ever. They're like, oh my God, this is so long, this was so boring, it was so miserable, it was so depressing, blah, 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 blah. I wasted my money. Which
I wouldn't say that actually, but I know why
you know
think
why I'm
say
thinking
that. Yes, I
right,
agree
exactly,
with you
because that's the whole thing. It's the ultimate reason why critics popped out, right? For me, it's the only reason why.
I just wanted to interject and let you know that there are some of us.
Oh, I know. I know there are, but again, we're always the minority. That's the problem. Is we're always the minority, you know, and that's why critics, you know, that's why critics and newspapers were the whole reason, right? To tell people how to spend your money, though, you know, that way people don't feel like they felt like they wasted their money, you know. It's not like now where everything is so disposable that it's like it doesn't matter. Back then, it's like that's literally critics. If we're talking strictly from a monetary sense, what movie you should go to see, what you should spend your hard-earned cash on that will give you the most amount of benefit, right? And it's hard. It's hard to satisfy the American public because our tastes are always changing, and because, contrary to popular belief, we don't know what the fuck we want. We have no idea what our tastes are because they're always constantly changing. But how Netflix, I feel like, benefits this is because this is a gangster drama that doubles as a think piece. You know, there is action, there is violence in this, but I would say that in terms of, like, the overall violence, it's not a movie that you go to where it's like, oh, it's so cool, you know, the tension is ramping up, you know, for when they're gonna kill that guy, you know? And I think that's part of this. This also factors into the reasoning why the first half didn't bother me as much as I watched more. So the first half, when
this movie felt like it was about abusive relationships, in the sense that
that's part of it. That's definitely a part of it. But I would say it's less so abusive, more so.
To me, it felt abusive because like Frank loves both Joe Pesci's character and Al Pacino's character,
Yeah.
and he's torn between both of them because he's trying to appease both of them rather than nip it in the bud too early.
Definitely.
He just lets them both, like, it never really seems like Frank's in control of his life.
Right, and that's definitely the main trajectory. And you do have actually.
That's what I got.
I would say that is a very good thing, but I think abusive is the wrong word to use because there's never a point.
Like, they care about him, but they don't care about him enough to put his feelings in front of their own. Like,
Right,
Joe Pesci
exactly.
still
But
sends
that's not.
him to go.
I don't think that doesn't ring abusive to me because to me that's most business relationships, and I feel like that's what happens in most of
Yeah,
these
but
mob
those were
movies.
more they transcended business. You know, like they all cared about his kids.
Right,
and
but that's always the case with mafia movies, right? Is that the whole thing is that these relationships always transcend business, and then when everything goes sour, it always sucks more because they've got so much emotional.
To me, it felt like it was about like the relationship, more specifically how it can become abusive when business gets in the way of friendship and pleasure.
But that's always a running theme across the entire mob genre, not just in Scorsese. That's always been
It just
a thing.
felt
How
very
business,
more prevalent in this
That goes all the way back to Godfather and Godfather Part 2. How the whole reason why Godfather 2 is both the fall is because you see the difference between Michael and Vito, and that Vito always put family first. Michael only cared about the business. Michael, as much as he claimed to, didn't give a shit about family. You know,
that's true, but it struck more of a chord in this movie.
Okay.
For me than other mob films.
I'll tell you what it is
so.
that I got in
That's
terms
just
of
me.
overall what this movie was trying to say overall. This movie, besides I would say being again, there were a lot of deconstructionist elements in this towards Scorsese
Explain
himself.
that. What do you mean by that?
I feel like Scorsese was trying to, and why I feel like specifically this feels the opposite of Goodfellas is because I feel like Scorsese is trying to deconstruct himself and what he's done with his previous work, where before Scorsese's always been about, like making this shit look as cool as possible. And this one, it's like the opposite, where he kind of wants to show them as old men. He wants them to feel like old men even when they're supposed to be young, because it's kind of the idea of they're always old and doddery and kind of like they were never meant for this line of work and this life, and how in a way that actually factors into the fact of it's almost kind of pathetic how alone and where they end up, where it's like, it's not one of those situations where it's like Goodfellas, at the very least, it's like, I have a feeling that this is going to end badly, but you're so in it for the ride and you're being so entertained along the way that you don't care. And then by the time things start to wind down, it's more so like, oh man, it's like a breath of relief from that like insane roller coaster ride, With this, it's a little bit different because it's like you kind of have a feeling where these guys are going because of where it sets up and where it ends, but it's more so a situation of where, to me, I feel like this is the most akin to real life, where how many times have we come to the conclusion that real life is fucking awful and real life is unsatisfying, and no matter what happens at the end of the day, everyone falls victim to the inevitable bitch that is time. And, you take what you can get and you enjoy what you enjoy and you do what you have to do just to make it and survive along the way, And that I feel like is the big difference overall, where this is not a situation where that the character, you can hope that there's something good in line for this character. They always say, again, it's the biggest problem, and it's the problem that Sopranos had when it ended, right? There's only 3 ways that any character in any mafia movie ends. In jail, ratting out their friends, or dead. So only ever one of those 3, right?
Yeah, and this holds true here.
Yeah, it does. But at the same time, it also kind of shows that it's like, well, what happens after that? And I feel like that's what sets this apart, because this is the first time where you get to see
Frank's biggest rival in this film is the clock, racing the clock.
Literally. And you feel that in the movie's length, and you feel that in its subject matter, right? In its nature. And that, to me, I feel like is what separates this from the rest of the movies, helps it stand out in the genre, helps it elevate the genre a little bit more, constantly exploring a genre that we think every single day has been explored, all that there is, that we've seen all there is to see from it, and at the same time,
I see what you mean by the deconstructionist
perfect
now.
opposite side of the coin from Goodfellas,
And so that makes me think that you must really have loved the last 15 minutes, the resolution of this film.
It was so beyond bleak and depressing, but to me, it was the best part of the whole movie.
With
the last
priest
15,
and just
20
showing
minutes
that,
with the priest.
Yeah, this man's done a lot of really bad things, but he's still a human. He's
he's
trying
still a human
to,
being.
while he has a few years left on this earth, reconnect with Peggy, and
but he didn't even get that. He didn't even get that.
He didn't get
sad.
anything. I also love how he didn't give them up at the end. He was the last one alive, and he didn't give them up. I think that was a huge character detail that I did not expect to get in the resolution, but I think that made his character even stronger.
Right, but at the same time, it's like, it doesn't matter, because it's like at that point, it's like, he could have given them, the cops were even saying to him at the end, it's like, you could have given them up,
so
but
to
it
me,
makes
this
no
was
difference.
super
They were all
well
dead. They were all going to die anyways, And that's kind of like what it is, where you flash on like each one of those minor characters, like, oh, this guy died this way, this guy died this way, this guy died this way, when it's funny at first, but then at the end, you're like, it's like, there's really nothing good that ends for these guys, you know? And that's kind of like why I feel like the mob genre, specifically the mob subsection of these crime movies, has always been for me the most emblematic of real life, because that's how real life works, right? No matter what happens, you always get screwed, you always have regrets, and in the end of the day, you die alone in your own arms, you know?
All right, well, maybe that's your view, but I know what you're trying to say.
A little bit cynical, but
Dom is more the cynic than I am. But
I
think we all would agree with the point, and the way you describe it, I think was very, very true to form.
And that for me ultimately is what also got me past it, because
so that's why I wasn't like, like when I say it's fine, like it's obviously in my top 10. It's one of the best movies I've seen this year, but it's airtight. But there was just still a few things that like just didn't do it for me, because I expect a lot from Scorsese, especially when this cast was announced. Oh man, but this was a ride, and I don't want to take anything away. So when I say fine, I don't want people to think like, oh, he's just like some asshole. Like, no. Don't get me wrong. The Mandalorian sucks too. This doesn't suck. This is actually really great.
Mandalorian doesn't suck, but
it's just like, I just think that I just think that some of it was trying to put a square into a circle, and that was just a little unfortunate, but what we got from it as like a think piece, as like a deconstructionist piece, is something I would, like you said, I would never have expected to have gotten from this genre. Right. So I'll take this film any day over not having it. Like, I'm glad this film now exists.
Definitely. Absolutely. And just to kind of like bounce off of that is that I like how also, in addition to the deconstruction aspect, just from the film itself, how it shows that within its characters, showing kind of like the different aspects, where the interesting thing about Pesci, if we're just talking about like the individual, like the big three, right? Everybody else, pretty much, I think we can agree, there's some people that have more screen time than others, but it is mostly these three. It's Pacino,
like, I know Steven Van Zandt
Pesci,
was in it, but I didn't see him.
Yeah, it's Pacino. Van Zandt was the singer. And the reason why you didn't is because it's not him. They're dubbing the whoever the singer. I think it's like Jerry Bale.
He was just in it for a second.
Over it. Yeah.
Okay.
So I don't even think he actually sings at all.
That's cool. He was in it though.
Yeah,
I like
definitely.
him.
But it's DeNiro, it's Pesci, and Pacino, and how those three, I feel like, represent the different viewpoints into this overall theme of just nobody can escape the inevitable circle that is time, right? And how they each represent that. Where when you meet Pesci is, already on the older side, right? He's already like looking close to 50, right? When De Niro meets him. But so by the end of the movie, when he's like old and like looking shriveled, you got to assume he's like, like I said, I don't know what age the character of Russell Bufalino was when he died, but he looks like he's like damn near 100, And what's it called? Where he's like a little bit more calm, a little bit more reformed, and the character is definitely a violent character, but I like how they don't need to show it. And this is where I feel like Pesci is definitely going to be the most underrated performance in the movie, and quite possibly the best of the three, is because
I agree.
They allude to Pesci's past, not just within the movie itself, but Pesci's past working with Scorsese, and it's definitely playing around with it, similar to what Tarantino was doing with the Manson murders, and how that was building towards Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. He's playing around with the audience's expectation of what they know about Joe Pesci and his history of working with his movies. Or what's the first thing you expect to see when you hear the words Joe Pesci and Martin Scorsese in the same movie together?
Just a violent guy.
Violent, crazy, wild, over the top, cursing every other sex. It's like, you motherfucker, it's like, it's what you expect, but he's playing around with that. Because here, Pesci's playing a very subtle character, very deep below, plays everything close to the chest. I don't think he yells once in this movie. Everything from him is a whisper,
Well, he's in a different position of power, too.
The only violent scene you see of him in that movie is when he comes home and his wife sees him and he's got the blood-stained shirt, and his wife tells him to go upstairs and get cleaned up, and that's it. It expects you. The movie fully expects its audience to be aware of Pesci's past working with Scorsese, and it perfectly builds in, and it makes that character such a rich character, based solely on your knowledge of the actor and his filmography and his previous performances. And in that sense, that's what makes Pesci's performance so beyond brilliant to me, and possibly the best of the three.
But I also think Russell's character is also, glorified by how Frank looks up to him and respects his level of power, even though he's not like the biggest mob boss.
And at the same time, why that also works is because you see Frank idolize him, and you understand why, because Pesci gave him a chance when a lot of other people wouldn't. So in terms of like, it's just that type of bond where it's like they could be through all sorts of toxic shit together, most of which I would say you don't see, but at the end of the day, you know that he's always going to love and respect him first, So you get that moment with Pesci. You don't get that moment with Pacino and Hoffa, you know, where it's like, as close as they do become, and they do become close, you never have that moment where it's like, Hoffa gave DeNiro something, Hoffa gave Frank something that he would have never had otherwise. You know, that was all Russell. And that's why, at the end of the day, why that moment was so important, why even after sitting through 3 hours, at the end of the day, you knew that at the end of the day, Frank was going to go with Russell over Hoffa. You know,
and that's
sad and that's depressing.
Russell
right?
gave him more, and he gave him the life.
Most
that
definitely. But going back to your point, also how, you know, in terms of Frank's idolization, that's also contrasted with Peggy and her as a little girl, and how she really never warms up to Russ, you know? And the movie doesn't really feel a need to explain that, and that's actually, funnily enough, another one of my problems with it, where I don't know if this is just a part of the actresses they had, both the younger actress and Anna Paquin, and the fact that they really don't have any dialogue, and so it's mostly just a staring performance, and so that's kind of like, I've grown like distasteful for me. It's like, oh, okay, it's you can have a character emote without saying a lot, but you also can't just rely on stares. And this definitely felt like more of a staring performance, which again, I feel like is what ruined it, because that character is supposed to be the bridge, the dividing force, you know, kind of the anti-Frank in terms of his and Russell's relationship, the thing that keeps that relationship from you loving it as much as you would want to, right? And then when you see that contrasted with Hoffa and how much she gets along with him, again, I feel like that comes down to the acting, where it's like that actress is supposed to be like, all blaze, you're supposed to feel that hatred that she feels for Russell, that simmering underlying hatred, like that awkward moment with the Christmas present, versus how this person basically loves Hoffa like he's a second father, you know, to the point where those two different father figures end up wrecking her relationship with her own father. Well, and I just feel like they don't hit that. They don't. That's the one part of the movie that everyone was like, yeah, it's great. Anna Paquin's incredible. I'm like, I'm sorry, that didn't do it for me.
It didn't do it for me either.
It really didn't.
But I want to know why you, what you think about the fact that he has 4 daughters and a wife, yet Peggy's really the only woman in his life who seems to have any sort of importance. Like, sure, his wife's important and all that, but she's more so just, like, needed because to be, like, a mob guy, you need to have a wife, and she plays the game with the other wives' and it's, like, a more of a networking tool, it always felt.
Right.
So, like, yeah, like, what? I mean, why do you think they only chose to, even though he has like this big family, only show it through the scope of one of the daughters?
Well, that's
it's a 3.5 hour film, so
right? Well, definitely they have time. Well, that's a thing. Again, that just goes back to, I may not necessarily have an answer to that. I feel like with that, it's just a situation of where, like, okay, that's the one daughter that they did a relationship with.
Yeah, I just want your take on it. You know, you're more rehearsed and versed in watching.
What that speaks to me, and again goes into what I think. Again, everyone is going to want to fucking murder me after this, but I'll tell you the other thing that Disney has over Scorsese besides, what's it called? Besides the de-aging, you know, with the money, they can make different female characters that don't feel like they're all just different variations of the same type. And
that is true, but it does make me so sad we always have to reference Disney this day and age.
And a lot of people, you know, will disagree with me and say, oh, they're all different versions of the same badass women. But let me tell you something. For me,
I don't think Disney are the only ones who can do that, but clearly Scorsese doesn't
say,
have a
say what you
compelling
will
female character
about
in this
Captain
movie.
Marvel, and I don't think she's a very well-written character. She's probably their weakest female character, but at the very least, her, Gamora, and Black Widow, I am never mixing those three up. Because those are, even though they're all different variations of badass, they all do have such their own great motivations and great origins, you know? Captain Marvel, you know, a little bit withstanding, but at the very least, I feel like the groundwork was there, at the very least. Scorsese, I don't think I've ever seen a single Scorsese female character that wasn't a wife, a daughter, or a prostitute of some kind, you know? Literally, no joke. Tell me a single Scorsese female character that doesn't fall into one of those three categories.
There's a girlfriend in Taxi.
Exactly. Taxi Driver?
Yeah.
Okay, you're right. That's the one. You're
I'm just
right.
fucking with you,
No. But
you're right.
You know what? You're right.
Just
That is the
fucking
one
with you.
situation where that doesn't fall into the type. You know. But even with that, you know, as great as Sybil Shepherd is in that film, I'm actually really happy that you brought that up because that is like probably the one.
I was just saying it because you're mostly right.
Yeah, no, but you're right because literally, no joke. Where it's like it goes back to my favorite moment, my favorite Scorsese movie, The Departed. My least favorite part about that movie is Vera Farmiga because he takes what could be a really awesome different variation on both Matt Damon and Leo DiCaprio's viewpoints, you know, kind of providing a contrasting viewpoint, and he just uses them as like, oh, that's a link between them because they're both banging the same woman. You know? And for me, that takes away from a lot of what makes that character a really rich and interesting character, you know? Where it's like, oh, it's like she's cheating on Matt Damon when she has no reason to, you know, because she fucks DiCaprio before she finds out that Matt Damon's an informant.
Yeah,
you know? Where it's like, for me at least, and again, this might just be my idealistic version of my own problems with seeing romance in movies, you know, especially gangster movies, when it is so one-sided. But
yeah, because it's gonna be through the lens of the
because again, same as Will about the mob genre, and like I said,
there wasn't many women doing hits on the mob genre.
And obviously, like I said, because
life,
again, it's supposed to be based towards real life. But again, in terms, I just feel like contrasted too with the amount of good, well-written female characters in all sorts of genres. I just feel like this is the one genre that's still trying to pick up the pace, and it was very lacking for me. Where in this sense, this was probably the first moment in not only a Scorsese movie but a crime movie where you needed a strong female character in order to provide that contrast. And I'm sorry, Anna Paquin staring blankly at the screen with resting bitch face for 90% of her screen time, and she has one line, that she just repeats in the one scene. It's like, it's like, I'm sorry, that to me does not provide the good, different sort of contrast that to me would make that scene work.
Yeah, so like, why even explore that route?
Exactly.
Then,
it just feels like pointless, and it feels like just extra time, which sucks.
Do you think it also is when you get to that level as a director and like a filmmaker that people, they just want to work with you so badly because they know that like any sort of project you do is going to have at least a minimal like amount of success that others may never get.
Part of it.
So people just don't want to like buck up and be like, hey, I do think that this is like a flaw in the film.
That's
you think that happens?
Oh, absolutely.
Like the yes man situation.
1,000%, absolutely. That does happen. Where
I don't want to speculate too much, but it just makes me think.
You're working with a master, of his craft. You're not. And
who are you to say something?
Exactly. You're not going to say a goddamn thing. You're if he says jump, you're going to say how high. Even
if he doesn't like what you say about his film, you're never working again.
Well, it's more than that. It's just a fact of it's like you're in that situation. It's like he may not write well enough movies. But in the current political climate, it's like plus with Scorsese, am I going to say a goddamn thing? Fuck no, Not to mention the fact that Scorsese has already kind of been called out on that, and his response is literally like, I don't have time, And it definitely is also a situation of where, because of where he is in age, it's definitely a situation where even if Scorsese wanted to change his current tactics on writing those types of characters, I don't think he would even be able to, even if he wanted to. So that's also definitely part of it, where that's the one aspect that he's never really been that strong with, even as good as a creator as he is, and it definitely was not going to get better over time, because he didn't choose to work on it because he didn't have to.
Was he a writer-director on this?
No, he was only directing. The script was Steve Zalian.
True, but I guess he could have made a change as a director.
Oh, absolutely.
Anyways, I just like that comment. Like, I really liked what you said about that, and it made me just wonder. And more about the behind the scenes of things.
Because it's one of those situations where it is a legitimate problem, but people are gonna fool themselves into thinking, oh, it's so great, it's so layered, it's so different because it's Scorsese, And you know what? That's our job as critics. We praise the parts that we like, but we gotta call it out where you see it. Again, it's everything having to do with Disney, and as much as we may disagree, I at least understand where you're coming from some of the time. And it's the same thing with me. Where it's like, yeah, I'm gonna call it out on the de-aging. I'm gonna call it out with the lack of strong female characters and how they didn't. And I get it. It's never been a necessity for one of his movies, but I feel like here was probably the first time where you needed that good counterbalance because again, you're only seeing the specific type of viewpoints. And again, if you don't want to have that in the movie, fine. But if you're hinting at it and you're claiming to make that part of the movie, but you don't have the goods to back it up, then I'm gonna call it how I see it.
Yeah, I agree. Like, don't get me wrong.
It's very clear that the screenwriter had that as a part of the movie. Peggy and that relationship that she had with her father, with Russell, with Hoffa, that was a part of the movie. You saw that. That took up screen time in the movie. That was that was her arc. It was a character arc. It was not just a one-off, character that you throw in there just to have them interact. That was a very singular, progressive character arc that for me did not work because of those reasons. And that to me is a flaw.
Yeah, I agree. And, it's one of those things where, like, it would just have, it was already a pretty great movie, pretty airtight and all that, but there's a reason why it's like landing at 7 or 8 in my top 10 films and not 2 or 3 where I expected it to be.
Right.
Now, the last thing I did kind of want to touch upon, just because the clock is ticking and we've been going. I love talking about this movie. It's so
definitely. And I'm really happy. Even if we're picking apart the parts that we don't like, it's still again. This was going to be a situation. This was never not going to be one of the best movies of the year. I said it before.
Oh yeah.
I said it again. Of like my top 2. I'm like, besides the fact of again, this is the first time. This is the first year again. Why 2019? I feel like is going to hold up a little bit more so than some other years this decade. Some other weak years, I would say. Is that this is the first year where you're getting Pacino working with both Tarantino and Scorsese. Something that I never in the same year.
Great performances in both films.
That,
in my opinion,
Pacino and DeNiro back on screen for the first time, and actually a good movie since Righteous Kill. Those three. Pacino, De Niro, and Pesci.
You're forgetting about Dirty Grandpa.
Pacino wasn't in that.
No, De Niro.
I'm talking the two of them together. in a movie.
Oh, okay. I was just fucking
Together
around
in a
because
movie.
you were like in good
No,
films, and I
no,
was like,
no.
well, you're forgetting about
In
one
a
of the
movie, you know?
shittiest movies De Niro ever
Not to
made.
mention the fact, but you're right, is the fact of those two have done, for the most part, nothing but garbage this decade, which is really disappointing.
just
You know,
paying
De
their
Niro,
rents.
Dirty Grandpa,
Plural.
Las Vegas, all the different crap that he's done. Pacino, you know, he kind of took a step back after Jack and Jill for obvious reasons. You know, he was picking and choosing, but I'm really
Which they
glad.
all can at this point.
Right.
The three of them can. I mean, obviously, even at that level of, I'm just going to assume. Allow me to speculate. If Martin Scorsese calls you, you pick up that damn phone first
Definitely.
ring. But you know, they can pick and choose because they're all legends. And it was cool to see that. Like, to me, this like cast was again pretty star-studded. We just spoke about that with Knives Out last
but
week.
unlike Knives Out, it was actually like well utilized because Scorsese
no one
knew
stepped
what he
on
was
their
doing.
toes
He's one of those guys. It wasn't just a situation of where, oh, you know, you're popular and famous. Oh, boom, I'll put you in here. You're popular and famous. You know, it's a combination of working with who you know, working with who you've done great stuff with in the past, while also, you know, in terms of all your projects, you know, because he's pulling from every project that he's ever worked on, going from the 70s all the way up until this decade.
This is a great example of like how sometimes directors have like their go-to actors or actresses that like they like to use but don't always work. But this they
works.
worked.
This was
They
one of those
worked.
situations where you see this and you're like, yeah, there's no way that this could possibly not work. You know, it's like you hear those four names: Scorsese, De Niro, Pacino, Pesci. You're like, that is must see. This movie could be a steaming pile of shit.
Yeah, you're still
Just
going to
because
watch
of those
it.
four,
You're still going to watch it.
And
So
the
let me-
fact that they deliver so hard, you know, and like I said, we haven't even gotten into Pacino's performance. I feel like Pacino kind of like got talked about the least, which sucks because out of the three of them, I would say he's the biggest lock for the Oscar.
I think it's because it was just such a good performance. Like, what more can you say about it? I think he was the best of
Very
the three.
humanizing performance too, towards a figure that I would say kind of got lost in the shuffle, because even though the majority of the movie focused on Hoffa and the Teamsters, it really kind of did get lost in the shuffle of the overall grand stature of the film, because they pulled it back and made it about Hoffa and his ego. Now, like I said,
look, he was a little crooked too, but at the end of the day, the thing is, he wasn't going to play as dirty of a game as the gangsters, so he was inevitably bound to lose.
Well, it was more than that. It wasn't a matter of playing dirty. It was just a matter of his ego. That's what got me.
But I was on his side, so I guess that's where I'm coming from.
Okay.
Like, that was his freaking company.
Definitely.
Like, that screw the fat guy who went in there and took it. Like, no. Like, that was his company.
Right.
It was being mismanaged, and he genuinely cared. Even going to jail for that company, you think that would embitter someone or
Definitely.
turn
he
them.
was still
So
just as
that's
into
why
it
I
with the
think like
Teamsters.
that's why I think we didn't really speak about his performance that much, because it was just like, usually I guess we kind of nitpick we do praise, but like,
yeah, we're mostly a nitpick.
There's a lot to nitpick, because it's a 3.5 hour film, and he was pretty flawless in my opinion,
Yeah, well, like I said, aside the fact of because he's the one who I think they did no de-aging for, so there's no distractions there, as opposed to with De Niro and Pesci, you got almost an hour of a movie that you got to get past before you can really see them like with just the makeup, as opposed to the de-aging, which is distracting as all hell. So with Pacino, you don't get that. It's also the fact of, again, with Pacino, a lot of people have talked about, specifically how around, I would say, after 95 with Heat, Pacino kind of fell into the, just yelling Pacino, which for me never took away from him, because even though, he was yelling a lot and kind of only giving one side, still he never stopped being entertaining.
He was a great hothead.
Because let me tell you, in terms of giving the same type of performance over and over again, I would watch Pacino in Devil's Advocate and any given Sunday yelling his head off over a lot of other actors that just give the same type of performance over and over again. I would watch those two movies in a heartbeat, over those types of movies. And he was still capable of giving great performances. The Insider, that's like top 5 favorite Pacino performances for me. Now, also keeping in mind that I still have a decent amount of his 70s movies to watch. I still haven't seen...
me too. We should get to that.
Yeah, I still haven't seen Serpico or Dog Day Afternoon,
bonus
but...
episodes.
Yeah,
that's on the docket,
but what
I
I liked about Pacino is that he was still yelling in this... even though there was a little bit of confusion, he may just be playing a different version of himself. I can always.
I just think his motivation as a character was always perfect.
Yeah.
So every action he did was justified. Why would you not yell if you were in his situation?
And also just the little moments that he had, showing that he cared. When he's yelling at the room full of people, calling them idiots, and Frank walks out. He's like, "I'm not gonna fucking be in there while you're calling me an idiot." He's like, "No, I wasn't talking about you. I was just talking about the rest of you." Come on. All those those little moments. Those little it's so human.
Look,
and
these
then,
people
when
were
he's
under
falling
immense
asleep,
pressure the entire time.
Talking and consoling it with Frank, as Frank's consoling him, and how even when he appeared confident, he was still doubtful. Pacino does such a good job humanizing Hoffa, with all of those, it's those little character moments. That's what I mean. It's not the big gusto moments.
And it's like, yeah, these people are like upper middle class, arguably like, you know, poor rich people, but they're still, you know, but they're not, it's not like a cakewalk for them.
Right.
Like they're living very stressful lives where they're working constantly. So like I'm trying to emphasize that like Pacino's actions always felt justified and in fact like super locked in by Pacino. The delivery was great, is what I'm saying. Like nothing felt out of place from him, and honestly, not really for most of the big three, aside from like what they were making. Back to my original point, De Niro do physically,
right?
Sometimes
specifically the scene where he throws the guy out of the store and is kicking him. It's like, yeah, you could tell. It's still going back. You can't de-age.
And maybe that's why it was a wide shot,
right,
from the back.
Most definitely.
So
most definitely. Well, because the problem is they try to do close-ups, and you end up with like a Jason Bourne scene where it's like a million quick cuts, and you have no idea what's going on. And you're just like, oh god, what happened here?
And the last thing I just want to speak about real quick, because we had a lot of fun talking about him on the El Camino episode.
Yes.
What'd you think of Todd? I forget his actor's
Clemens.
actual name.
Underused.
Me too.
I'm so confused because like everyone that saw this at the premiere when it premiered at New York Festival was like, oh man, Clemens for the win. First off, he's got 3 scenes in the movie. Second off, he's got like what, a few lines, and yeah, the stuff with the fish is funny, but it's like, man, give me more. You know, for all the actors that were so well utilized, I would say even like, you know, down to Bobby Kennedy, Sebastian Maniscalco with 3 scenes as Crazy Joe Gallo, and he's one of them, you know, one of the standouts. I'm like, Clemens, I'm like, damn, give me some more, you know? I thought the guy sitting next to him, another character actor that Scorsese worked for, Louis Cancelmi, who popped up on the last season of Boardwalk Empire. Ironically enough, as an undercover Jimmy Malone, again, refer back to Untouchables about that, I thought he was like way more entertaining than Clemens in that scene.
He was great.
Yeah.
He was great. Yeah, no, I just thought that, you know, he was... I just wanted more from him, and I don't think that's his fault.
No,
I thought
absolutely
the performances
not.
were good.
That's not his fault. That's just like with the character and what they did with it.
Again, it's just another reason why this movie's in my 7 or 8 spot.
I'm really confused why this character got this much hype. I'm like, if anything, it's a subject of like underutilized.
Yeah, I think so too, and that's like, I think being the son of one of the main 3 characters, you know, who is clueless but has like this like legacy to fulfill, you definitely would have wanted a little more from all the children, I would say, which makes this, since it was 3.5 hours, if it was like a 2-hour movie, it would have probably been like a top 2 or 3 movie for me on the year. But because we had so much time and because there were like these performances by like up and coming names or bigger names that weren't the big 3 but were still like good performances, but we still feel a little empty about it, that's why it's sitting at like a 7 or 8, you know? And that's why I wanted to bring them up, just to further emphasize that point. Like, great performance, but it's just with that much time on the film, you know, I would have wanted a little more.
So that's kind of like, I feel like where we're coming to a standstill overall is, again, the misuse, I would say, of the female characters, the de-aging overall, and why that's distracting. I feel like we did a really good job of breaking down the specific components of why that was so distracting, not just the fact that it was bad CG.
Makes me sad we always have to bring Disney up, but
we have straight CG, and the fact of, you know, like I said, the length, you know, like I said, it is a moment where every single moment is important. But again, it's 3.5 hours. You're going to feel that. But so if we're doing star ratings, like I said, I feel like it's those primary 2 things for me that ultimately keep this from being a perfect movie. Otherwise, I feel like this would be a perfect movie. And again, going back to my original point, I think that Netflix is the only reason why this movie is as successful and as talked about as it is, you know, because as much as we can think otherwise, this movie comes out in theaters, it's a totally different conversation we're having. And I think you and I can both agree on that. So with that being said, this is still a 4.5 out of 5 for me. No question. Like, again, one of the best of the year. It was a situation of where just by default for who was involved, it was never not going to be top 10 of the year, you know?
We agree. 2 weeks in a row.
Pretty much. 4.5.
Yeah, I mean, I'm willing to forgive it because it was such an incredible feat of filmmaking, such a long film that didn't feel long, like you had texted me after you watched it. And, you know, you gotta just be able to enjoy this one for what it is. The writing is superb. Maybe our characters do seem a bit out of place, like we've said, but obviously we still thought it was a great film. Don't let it ruin that for you.
Absolutely.
Enjoy this film.
Yeah. And the last thing I wanted to close out on before we head out of here is, did you catch the shot that was by the Mid-Hudson Bridge?
I did.
Yep, I was wondering if you caught that.
I was wondering if it was the Taconic. Were they
I
shooting
don't
on the
know how
Taconic?
much of this, but they shot a decent amount of this right here.
Dude, I
in
kept thinking the
Poughkeepsie
whole time while I was watching. I was like, that has to be the Taconic.
Yep,
I know that
it was.
road.
Not the Taconic, Mid Hudson Bridge. That goes across the river to New Paltz.
But I thought I also saw the Taconic where they pull over and it's the first gas station. I know that gas station. I think so. I was like, dude, that looks exactly like the fucking Taconic. Yep. Okay, that's cool. Yeah. All right, awesome.
I just wanted to make sure you caught that because I literally saw it because I was looking because I knew how much
you
this
didn't
movie
tell me that before we did this because that would have made me like it a little more selfishly.
It's the scene where he's throwing. It's one of the scenes where he's throwing away the guns and he's going down by the river.
I know those rocks. I've been on those rocks.
Bridge in the back. I'm like, holy fuck yeah, that was Poughkeepsie, baby.
I've been on those rocks.
Oh man, me too. I was hanging on those rocks like just the other day.
That would have honestly made me
fucking yeah.
That would have made me biased. So I'm really glad you didn't tell me that.
Yeah, good thing we saved that for the end
of the podcast. It was in the back of my head. Because that's like your local pride, I'm sure if you guys in Arkansas
it's a local thing, there's always going to be biases involved. So with that being said,
I just want to tell them where they can find our show on the interwebs.
Do that, because I was about to forget that, so I'm glad you
I know you
remember
were.
that. Yeah,
because
you know me so well.
You have your thing you got to say, which is important, especially after this episode. But what also is important is if you guys follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Deezer, Pocket Cast, Radio Public, Audible, all the great places you can find us. Coming soon on YouTube as I'm pointing to the video. Subscribe, comment, give it a thumbs up, interact with it, retweet. We're on you know what I mean? Like, we'll post about it from our personal Twitters. It's on Instagram. It's on Facebook. Talking TV Podcast. No G. TALKIN. If you like what we're doing, show us that you like what we're doing because we need the support, we need the help, and we appreciate you listening.
With that being said, thank you guys for listening, and as always, watch more fucking movies. We out.
We out.